Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at the Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright, and you know my favorite Nick Fury? It's passive-aggressive Nick Fury.
Today we're talking about minute 90, which begins with an unconscious Clint being dragged away and ends with Fury starting to come clean about Phase 2. Joining us on the show today, we have a new guest. It's Lachlan Thiele from the Quiet on Set podcast. Hello, Lachlan.
Hello, my friends. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm very excited.
So great to have you here.
We are thrilled to talk with you about this. And, the first question in picking these particular minutes, we're talking today, tomorrow, and then we've got another episode next week, and then we'll have some more down the road. But what particular reason drew you to kind of picking these minutes?
It's the low point, right? That's the most exciting part of this entire minute, is that it's the massive couple minutes beforehand, big fights. They're all fighting each other, but also Loki and his goons. And now it's sadness in the air, thanks to those lovely strings that are playing throughout the entire background the entire time, right? Just that little...
If you didn't know, you should feel sad now. You can hear the sadness.
Right?
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for Nick Fury being so sad, you wouldn't be able to tell it was a sad scene, right? But this is the moment that they're no longer the meat bags of Iron Man and Thor, but this is the part where they have a reason to avenge with Phil Coulson's just recent passing.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like it's an interesting way to kind of construct the script and to kind of build this story in this idea that, they're trying to come together. Fury has this idea, as he'll kind of talk about more in tomorrow's minute, but he has this idea about bringing people together to help fight the fights that we can't do ourselves. But it really kind of, as we've seen, they really have a hard time coming together. They all fight. They don't know how to have conversations and talk with each other. And the script is really constructed in a way where Phil Coulson is kind of everybody's friend, and we love him, and we know that the director has a penchant for doing this with beloved characters to kind of heighten the stakes. And this becomes that moment. And to your point, this gives them a reason to avenge now. And in the way that they put it, they're bringing them together to fight for a reason and a purpose and everything. But really, it's to avenge. And that's an interesting perspective for kind of the construction of a team and finding its cohesion through that, I suppose. It's cohesion through Phil's blood.
Exactly. I guess he never got you to sign these, right? Like, those are the strings. Those are the strings that are playing for sadness, the sadness strings. It's interesting to look at this as part of the formula of Marvel movies, right? That it's not just Marvel movies, but it seems to be kind of cementing here that we have this, like, we have hero movement, and then the moment of quiet before the storm. And here it's really that sort of inward bit of self-loathing that we have to watch the heroes go through, and it's an exercise of humanity through shame. Shame that we weren't able to do more, shame that we weren't standing there able to protect this guy who needed protection when he needed protection the most. Shame that we weren't able to stop Loki many of the times that we had an opportunity to stop Loki. Shame that we didn't have the technology and the tools. I think that's all very interesting, and to the extent that this provides a motivating element for the characters, I guess, is the extent that it provides a motivating sort of emotional launch pad for us as the audience to buy into the fact that these guys it's time to avenge, right? It's time for the assemble moment. And to me, it works, but I'm more bullish, I think, on this movie than you, Andy. Like, do you feel manipulated positively?
Well, I mean, it certainly feels written to kind of take this path, but it feels very much just kind of the nature of scripts. And if you're enjoying the characters, I think that you can buy into the emotional beats. And for me, I mean, I certainly have my issues with this film, but this is definitely an emotional beat that I connect with because, I mean, I've enjoyed Phil Coulson since Iron Man. I think he's a great character, and I think that it's earned. They earned this moment here. I mean, Lachlan, what's your perspective on Phil as he's kind of grown and changed over the course of the previous films leading up to this?
Well, he's obviously not in any kind of major moment. He's this little side character that comes out and he's always lovable and enjoyable. And just to see him go and just everyone just love him, as you guys said, it's like that's the tugging of the heartstrings there. It's sad to see him go. Well, sort of go, because then they had the whole spin-off in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. He kind of dies.
Because they learn just how lovable he is, right? Like
that they bring him all back.
Yeah, they can't let go of Coulson. He has to go to Tahiti and come back as a Frankenstein's Coulson. So
Coulson's death allowed them to put their egos aside. So at least his death wasn't for nothing, right?
It is funny. It's like the TV show really ends up feeling so much more for audiences more than the story purposes, because I mean, even the franchise in the scope of like what is canon and what isn't, that show, while it recognizes the films never recognize it. Like you never hear Phil Coulson's alive. He's, all of this, like it never
so
comes
one-sided.
up again. It's totally this one-sided relationship, and it just really makes it purely for the fans, which, I mean, I suppose has its upside, but at the same time, in the story purposes, what it does to this moment is it really does kind of deflate the emotional beat that we have with the losing of a character.
Yeah. But we do get those sweet Dutch angles, though, or at least that screamingly loud Dutch angle to fit both Iron Man and Cap on the screen at the same time, backlit heroically. So that's something.
They kept just adding a degree until they could get Cap into the shot. Right. They were like, just keep going, guys. We'll get him into the shot at some point. It was 90 degrees at the first take, and then they just kept bringing it back.
I do find this, to me, it's frustrating, and I notice it every time I watch it. We start on, like, in the first second of this minute, we've got Clint on the floor, right? We've got Scarlett Johansson. They're in the same shot. And then we cut to Downey and Evans, right? And then we reveal from behind the post, now we're in the conference room and it's Downey and Evans again. And I sort of miss the fact that we're cutting time here because we've got an emotional montage and we've introduced now 4 of the Avengers, but and obviously the other Avengers aren't here, right? We don't have Bruce is still somewhere else on a tiny bicycle somewhere. But it is weird to me that we cut from Evans and Downey to Evans and Downey out of their outfits, out of their uniforms. It's always struck me as a little bit sideways.
I suppose that's part of the reason that we're coming in on that strut is intended
of time.
Yeah, is intended to kind of give us that passage of time as we kind of are making this shift. And the music also is helping. It's kind of this heavy moment, and it does feel. I mean, we're coming in very much on the end of the last scene as Fury, as Coulson just dies there in his arms, and he says the medical team's here, they called it. And so it definitely feels like the kind of the heavy end of that scene. So I mean, I definitely understand your point. It is a strange place to cut from and into, but I suppose that was just their thinking, is like, let's come in on that so that it kind of breaks the audience's sense of continuity, and it puts us into a new place.
Yeah.
I think that if you are doing a montage that's really sad, but then you're cutting to Banner on a bicycle, it is going to ruin the emotional weight of that montage into a comedic bit.
Right. Banner on a clown bike.
Or it could be still in a free fall for all we know, and then you just...
Right.
So one thing actually before we jump into that scene though, I do just want to comment on the lighting of that scene that you were just bringing up, Pete, the Dutch angle in the kind of that engine or the space around engine 3 where Steve and Tony are, like the lighting, that backlight with the sun kind of coming through all the holes in the ship's hull. I mean, it's just beautifully lit, and so that's something I do appreciate about that particular
and the
moment.
fact that it's not like we forget or don't forget that they're still standing in an open gaping maw in the side of the helicarrier. That's not necessarily smoke. That's like cloud that's coming passing them, and I think that's very cool.
Yeah, right. So, all right. Well, so we're in the conference room. My first question, and this might tie into kind of like your, how awkward it feels for you to cut from Steve and Tony to
Steve and Tony.
To Steve and Tony. My question, though, is like, okay, we just had Natasha also, and then when we come into this conference room, there is no Natasha. And my thinking has always been, why is this just a meeting among men at this particular point? Why is it just Fury talking to Tony and Steve about Phil? And, is she not here? Or is it just because, I get it, she wants to be with Clint perhaps, but I don't know. Has it struck either of you that Natasha isn't in this particular situation?
Well, don't forget, Andy, Maria Hill's also present, but she never gets to sit down.
Well, always standing in the back.
Further back. Further back away from the conference room.
Right. It does strike. I mean, Lachlan, I'm eager to hear your perspective, but it does strike me as weird that she's not present because I don't understand why everybody's sad. Like it feels like she should be there.
Yeah, I feel like the idea behind it is that she's with her friend. She's with Clint, who's now recovering. So she's not caring about the team. She cares about one of her best mates, who's clearly not in the best of shapes right now. And if they're going to include her, then they've got to include sort of a tied down Hawkeye so that he can also be part of this conversation as well. And I feel like that wouldn't have worked with the whole setup of...
They just need Hawkeye on the table. Solved.
Strapped down. It would have made it, but I feel like again I love this desk that they're at. I love this because it's sort of like a play on any of the traditional superhero desks where they kind of go in a V formation instead of a more practical rectangular shape, because obviously when they were designing this in the world of the movie, I can definitely see Nick Fury going, I'm standing here, I need them all to face me in a sort of angled fashion. So it's a very strategic move that he stands right at the end there, and all 6 of them would have to sit in those chairs facing him as the leader. So he's definitely having a bit of a power play by standing at the end here, and again pushing Maria Hill into the other room so that she can't be part of this conversation.
Is it weird at all? So about the desk, first of all, it's also cool that from this angle, it's the first time I've actually noticed that it's also kind of an A, right? Like it's a play on what you might otherwise get in an animated show where they just heavy up on, Avengers need to be sitting at a big A table. But the other thing that is so strange about this is they've actually inlaid, it looks like the SHIELD logo into the floor here. And I've never noticed how weird that eagle head looks right at Fury's feet that he's kind of standing on. What is the purpose of this? Like, why when designing the ship would they end up putting the giant logo on the floor? I don't think we've ever talked about that.
No, we haven't. But I think part of the design, and it is weird, and I don't think I think I'm just kind of piecing it together now, because we've talked a little bit about the angles of all the desks below.
Yes,
and those are kind of the wings of this eagle shape, and yeah, it's kind of the head of it coming up right at the point where Fury would stand at his little consoles there, where of course Maria Hill is currently standing.
Maria Hill is always right wing. She's always right wing.
So it is an interesting decision to kind of put it this way, and plus, I mean, again, jokingly, we always talked about how Hydra was so good at branding, and moments like this, it's like this is where the Hydra team has really kind of infused their thinking in saying we need more branding. Like, let's put it everywhere because right behind this conference table on the wall is a big Shield logo.
Yep.
And so it's like they seem to find ways to just kind of start putting it in everywhere. And I love that this entire room has logos and itself is a big logo.
Yes. It's a metal logo.
Yeah.
It's the worst layout for desks ever. It's
truly,
impractical, but they were going for that's like, we need to make it like a bird. Let's make it like a bird. They're like, why can't we just have it straight, guys? Come on. It's like, no. Fury says bird desks. Let's go.
I mean, even if nobody can see each other, shut up. We don't care if anybody can see each other. We're S.H.I.E.L.D. Don't you forget it. I can't forget. We know you can't forget it.
Oh, it's so funny. It's just too funny.
I've just noticed as well, sorry, that in one of the shots where just before, again, moving along in the scene, Fury goes to throw the cards around, Maria's just a tiny little figure in the background. So she's present, but she's just not present.
She never gets to sit.
There's no point of having her in the background of this shot to just don't include her at all, or do include her within the major group. But I guess she was never a massive player. It would have been better to have Natasha in the background, at least there, than Maria Hill at all.
This is definitely an interesting element with the Maria Hill character that has been largely cut from the film. We've talked quite a bit, Lachlan, about some of the deleted scenes over the course of the film, and there was a whole through line starting at the very beginning of the film. The film was originally going to open with Maria Hill being interrogated or questioned, probably is more appropriate, by the World Security Council about everything that had gone on, and it all took place after the fact, after the Battle of New York.
Right.
And she was talking about how Fury was making all these rash decisions and she didn't agree with him and it was all his fault. But over the course of her conversation with the World Security Council, she kind of comes to understand what he was doing and comes to agree with him. But that really shaped all of the kind of looks and everything that we have of her as Fury is making decisions over the course of the film. And it really seems like she doesn't agree with him a lot of the time. And so it's interesting when we have her standing behind here. I mean, my thinking is it's largely because when Fury pulls the cards out and said these were in his pocket and tosses the bloody cards on the table, we get a cut to her as she kind of raises her eyes and looks at Fury because she knows that's not true, as we'll find out a few minutes from now. Mm. And so it's interesting that they're setting these moments up with her that are designed in a way where there's this built-in antagonism between these characters. And so it's interesting the remnants that we as the audience have of this film with this character who's largely kind of standing around and in the background and stuff, but the antagonism isn't built in for us because those scenes are all deleted. But it leaves an interesting hole with that character. And so I guess we're just meant to read what we get, with what it is. And so I don't know. I mean, how have you, like when you watched this film, what was your sense of Maria Hill as a character?
Omnipresent, just always there, never doing much, but just always there, watching and taking notes. It just seemed like it was Fury's assistant with a gun, because if that deleted scene was in the film and it started off with her discussing what had happened, it would have totally played into this character and it would have given me a reason why she's in these scenes, or at least in these particular minutes, because this one does stand out because there is a whole cut to her standing there and then cutting back and then it's continuing on with the scene. Like, we know she's there, but then nothing comes out of it until a little bit later where she approaches Fury on the whole card situation, which are so still bloodily fresh that they leave a splatter on the table when it's thrown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where did he get that? Is it actual blood? Is it from Phil? I don't even want to know. It's so disgusting when I think about it. I
think it might have just been a quick dip in.
Yeah. Fury actually has a blood boy. And so he just went to the blood boy bank. Gross. I
mean, Fury is the sort of guy who's like, well, he's already dead. Just dip. He's not going to bother. It's not going to bother him. Yeesh. Well, okay. So, back to Natasha. One other thing that I thought was a potential reason for the fact that she's not at the table at this particular moment, and the reason that we're having this conversation specifically between Fury, Tony, and Steve is because she's kind of already on the team. Like, she's kind of already been billed as this person who works directly with Fury ever since Iron Man 2, somebody who's on board and buys into everything that they're doing. This conversation specifically feels like it's Fury's last chance to really sell it to these two people who we've been noticing are feeling a little uncomfortable and sketchy about the way that Fury is handling some of the things. And while it might make sense for Natasha to be there and kind of like be kind of his one other person who buys in and kind of helping him with his pitch, I guess the way that I end up seeing that it plays is it really becomes this personal conversation that he's trying to approach these two specifically to kind of get them to buy in one last time. Does it feel like that's perhaps the reason that they ended up scripting it this way?
Yeah, definitely. Compared to, I mean, you would also have to have Banner and Thor on it because they're also very against it, but these two seem to dislike each other quite a bit. Obviously, before the big battle they've just gone through, there's a whole scene where they're telling each other to suit up and see how they are, It's the complete opposite of what mums want in the cinema. They want them to suit up even more. They want them to suit down in the cinema, the mums do. So it's a bit of a situation where these guys' egos, again, it goes back to their whole egos of breaking it down. It's a strategic play by Fury to get them to back down, put their egos aside. Iron Man, you're not Captain America, you're part of the Avengers now. I've already got Black Widow on board, and we had Hulk and Thor, but they've fallen out of the airship right now. But we'll get back to them. We'll do our own separate board discussion with those two once they're back.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It gives us a chance. I think too many bodies around the conference table makes it feel less solemn, right? And to your point, these two guys need to be on the same page strategically again for the next act of the movie, right? Like we have to believe that they're on the same page and have something to fight for together, maybe more so than the rest who feel like already on board. I think the one that I can't rationalize. I can rationalize Maria Hill being back in the back. I just still struggle with not having Scarlett Johansson at that table. That's the thing that feels empty to me, that she feels like she needs to be bought in too, even as these two guys are wrestling with their egos. It is a miss to me not to have her there.
Yeah, it is a strange element that she isn't here, but it is what it is. As far as Fury's line of thinking, I do think there is this element, and I wonder if this whole card angle came to him because of Phil's last words to him, where he says, "It's okay, boss, this was never going to work if they didn't have something to," and then it's kind of that Monty Python,
Yeah.
It's like that little moment. But yeah, that's the last thing that he says, and it does make me, I don't know, I just think it's curious. Like, is Fury thinking about that when he's just like, yeah, they do need something to believe in, and that's what I'm going to give him. I'm going to go to Phil's locker, get the cards, go
steal his stuff,
dip him in his back where there's the gaping hole from the scepter, and call a meeting. Like,
so gross. But it does make Phil Coulson the smartest guy in the MCU. Like, he's the one who gave Fury the idea. Then everything's like, Phil Coulson is the singularity.
And again, it would have been, I think, more meaningful if he didn't end up running 7 seasons of a show. But
you could be an antagonist, a small screen antagonist if you want. But us fans will stick together.
There you go.
It seems very directed at Cap, though. That's the only thing, right? The cards aren't directed at Tony at all, right? It's a bloody card of Captain America. And that's the one that he lands on. He double dips. And I'm thinking that all of the cards are Captain America, so that no matter which one he picks up, it's definitely going to be his face, right? So he's gone through all of Coulson's cards and picked out all the Captain America ones and just used those. But
sure.
I just feel like this one particular moment is clearly directed at Cap. because I don't know why, because I feel like he's the one who could be on board the most, since in this one he still believes in the whole, agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. is good, S.H.I.E.L.D. is not bad, which we obviously get to later on, and that breaks down his character. But at this moment, it feels like Fury is directing this at Cap, and Tony obviously later on sort of just walks away and has his own moment of recollection and going, yes, this is the team that we need.
Well, and theory that, because Fury believes that Captain America is the leader of the team, right? Like he's the one who he needs Cap to stand up.
Yeah.
Because Cap is the bona fide military hero. I mean, we know he was only really in the military for a couple of weeks, but he's still he's the one who wears the stars and stripes and bears the weight of the shield and needs to be the one that everybody follows. Tony has never been the leader of men, right? He's the Flibberty Gibbet. He's the one who does whatever he wants when he wants to do it. And so I think that's a legitimate case for playing those particular strings on Cap.
Well, it's definitely, and I mean the cards definitely tie into Steve as kind of Fury's direct plea to him, essentially, and the way that we get that fantastic shot through the bottom of the conference table looking at Steve, who's out of focus. We see the in focus bloody Captain America card laying on the table, and then he reaches down, picks it up, and it rack focuses to him as he looks at it. Like, it's a fantastically constructed shot to really show us that moment, right? But then, and this is where I don't know exactly the angle that the filmmakers are going with, but as Fury continues talking through all of this, he says, we're dead in the air up here, our communications, location of the cube, Banner, Thor, I got nothing for you. And then he says, lost my one good eye. And by this point, we cut to Tony. And as he says this, Robert Downey Jr. reacts to his line and he looks up as if there's some direct thing that Fury is like now trying to say to him, but I don't really understand exactly what he's doing there and why we're getting this reaction shot from Tony, because it doesn't
right.
It doesn't feel like I'm having any connection like I did with Steve in the card.
Right. Have you lost an eye? Anybody?
Yeah.
Anybody?
It's his favorite line. Anytime he needs to kind of get people to relate to him, he's like, I lost this eye. I lost it. It could be any situation. He was standing in line to get coffee and someone stabbed his eye. It could just be making any kind of scene up. Just, I lost my eye.
That makes every situation, I don't know if it makes it a little more gross. He's upset at his coffee. I lost my one good eye. Maybe I had it coming.
Margaritas, everyone, but my eye.
No wonder I got the wrong order. I had it coming. It's a strange reaction from Tony, and I mean, I guess we can kind of continue this conversation as their conversation kind of moves past this point as Fury starts kind of coming clean here. He starts talking about, yes, we're going to build an arsenal, all that sort of stuff. But I am curious how he is trying to reach Tony. So we'll just have to kind of keep looking at that over the course of this conversation. I don't know if I have anything else for this particular minute. Do either of you?
It's a solemn minute.
I think the hardest thing for me to get my head around is the fact that Cap didn't immediately go sign Coulson's cards. It's the one thing that I struggle to believe, is that he didn't immediately just pull out a pen and just sign them right there and then. But obviously Coulson was playing the long game and just refused to let him sign it because he knew he had to die to bring them together.
Yes. Yeah, would it have lessened the event had they been signed? Right? Is Cap like, oh, I already signed these. Why do I need to see them again?
Yeah.
They're covered in blood, so what? I did my part. Right.
Yeah, he forgot to put the dot on the eye, so he pulls out the thing again and just dots the eye and goes, oh, there we go, there's the mistake I made.
Dots it with the blood. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's still fresh.
Yeah, it's so classy.
Yeah.
You guys are really classy.
It is, it is an interesting beat that we have with these cards for sure. And I mean, to your point, Pete, it is such a dig for Fury to come into this situation. Guess he never did get you to sign them. It's like, wow.
Right. It's funny. Like we chart Fury over the course of this movie, and he goes from military leader to fascist to kind of an asshat over the course of about 90 minutes. Why do we like this guy?
Because it's Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
You cannot deny the man's charm.
You can't deny the man's charm.
Very true.
Alpha casting.
That's right. Now I have a really gruesome question regarding these cards.
Yeah, you're right. The dotting the I in blood is not gruesome enough, Andy. You're right.
Right. Are they worth more now that they are bloodied by one of the people who works with the Avengers?
Provenance uncertain. That's what it says on the auction site.
Does the blood affect the foxing around the edges?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
All right. Well, let's close up shop for this minute. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about minute 91. So, Lachlan, tell us a little about your podcast and what you're doing over there on it, Quiet on Set.
Yes, I do the Quiet on Set podcast with my co-host Ewan Graff. We kind of just do the latest coming out on the movie scene. We kind of cover a bit of everything. Most recently, we've done something like Beau is Afraid, which is obviously nice and spooky and scary. And then I just realized we've also done another spooky and scary one with Evil Dead Rise. So, we're not just doing horror stuff. We are doing a lot of other things. Obviously, at time of recording this, Guardians 3 is about to drop, and we'll probably be covering that this week. So, everything that you want with movies, we kind of do it.
Fantastic. And I think by the time these episodes release, you actually may be in Cannes. Doing some reporting from there. So
yes, that is also coming up. We're heading to I've got to keep getting this right because I pronounce it Cannes the way I say it, but it's Cannes, and I feel like I'm going to go annoy a lot of French people by going and saying Cannes. But yes, we'll be heading to the Cannes Film Festival very shortly, and we'll be covering some of those big releases and small releases as well that I'm very excited for.
Oh, that's really fun.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lachlan, so much for joining us today. We certainly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
And we will be back tomorrow with Lachlan to talk about minute 91. So, Pete, thanks as always.
Oh, Andy, tomorrow will Tony be scolded to action?
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.